Welcome to the Balancing Ambitions podcast. I'm your host, Kim Menapace. You are not alone in your pursuit to balance family life, work, side hustles, and taking care of yourself. Balance is not easy to achieve by any means, but we can all work to get better at it together by sharing our stories, tips, and wisdom. Let's dive into this week's episode.
Hi, everyone. So we have a really fun episode for you today. I'm here with Kim Menapace, and we are actually both working moms. We both have podcasts, and we actually live in the same town. And I connected with her over the summer. And so we've been, as you know, busy moms trying to get schedules coordinated. We're finally here, and I'm really excited to do this joint episode. So for my audience, Kim, why don't you do a quick intro, and then I can introduce myself to your audience.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for having me, Angela, and for Angela's audience on how she does this. I'll give you a little bit of background about me. So I am a working mom that's been working in Boston in the tech industry primarily for about 15 years. I live in the suburbs outside of Boston with my two little ones, a 6-year-old and almost 4-year-old. So my son and a daughter. My husband grew up in the town, and that's why I ended up back there, but I lived in Boston for a number of years. And I am a real estate investor. I'm also just kind of a scrappy, side hustler kind of person. And so one thing that I found through the community with real estate investing primarily was connections with other women, other couples that had gone into real estate investing together who had a W-2 job or some that didn't. And I just found beautiful connections and wanted to have more of those conversations in a forum like this. And that's why I started my podcast, Balancing Ambitions. And that's how I've been doing that about a year now. I'd love for the episodes to be more consistent, but I want to pack a lot of, punch into my episodes. So if something doesn't happen for several weeks, I just give myself grace and let that be what it is. And then make sure we get to schedule lovely conversations like today's, which I know it's going to be a phenomenal conversation. So thank you so much for having me. And for vice versa, for my audience on Balancing Ambitions, I'd love for you to introduce yourself, Angela.
Well, thank you so much, Kim. Yeah, so I'm Angela Lee, and my podcast is called This Is How She Does It. And similar to Kim, I'm a working mom. I have a full-time corporate job in marketing primarily. So I work for a pharmaceutical company in the Boston, Cambridge area. And I have 3 little kids. They're all in elementary school now. So my kids are a little older than yours, Kim. My oldest is 9, and then I have 8-year-old twin girls. So I basically had 3 kids. We call them my Irish triplets. So 3 kids in 14 months. And I, took my standard mat leave when I had the children and then rolled back into my job. And I think after having my first, I did have a really strong community of other moms or women who were pregnant at the same time as me. And then we all happened to have babies within 3 months of each other. And so they were my lifeline in those early years. And just asking them those questions, right? It felt like I had to live and learn how to navigate 2 very different worlds, working like I didn't have kids and then going home to parent like I didn't have a job. And I really had a hard time managing this transition back to work. So luckily, I just had this group of amazing women who we just supported each other through those early years. But I recognized overall, I also worked with a lot of female managers who, in the beginning months, right, everyone's like, oh, how's the baby? How's everything going at home? But then I was really struggling when I went home. We didn't talk about the fact that I wasn't sleeping or, all those transitions that happen. And people at work kind of forgot that I had a kid at home. And I just felt so lonely. I missed some sort of memo, that transition. I just got thrown back into work. And luckily, my mom was watching my son, and she was amazing. So from a childcare perspective, I didn't struggle too much. I knew my child was taken care of, but it was just, how do I integrate this new part of my life into everything, every life, work-life balance? And I struggled with that in the beginning. And I just recognized that there needs to be more of these conversations, right? Everyone is dealing with it, but we don't talk about it. And so this was 9 years ago when I had my son, and my podcast just started earlier this year in March of 2025. It's something that's been on my heart for so many years. And I finally got to a place where my kids are a little older, and I felt like it's the time for me to bring this message out. And so I interview other working moms around how she does it. And really, it's my inspiration or my mission is to help other women not feel so alone and hear stories from other women around how are they figuring out laundry and grocery shopping and meal planning and also climbing up the corporate ladder as well. So it's been super fun. So yeah, I'm so excited to be chatting with you today, Kim.
Yeah, something I love that you said there was lonely. When you were talking about this before you had mentioned that word, that was the one that came to me. And I have felt lonely more times than I can count in the last 6 years of being a mom. And with COVID, with my husband doing career changes, I didn't mention this, I'm in product and engineering, so tech world, and it skews a bit more male. So even my managers have all been male here. But finding those bright spots and those pockets of connection with other women, working moms. There's this woman that I work with who lives out of state, and we're primarily in Boston. We used to be in Cambridge for a number of years, and now we're in Boston. But when she and I get to connect either over Google Meet or Zoom, or when she comes to the office in person, we just talk family all the time. She has two sons. I have my two kids. We commiserate. We hold, build each other up, give ourselves grace and stuff. And I think that loneliness is so real. And I love having raw, honest conversations. I'm someone who doesn't like small talk at cocktail parties. I want to go right into to deep conversations about like this. So I can just resonate so much. And I think we have a lot of shared values and reasons why we started our podcast.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about why you started your podcast, because I think for me, it was part of that loneliness and wanting to do something bigger than my corporate job and having some purpose bigger than being a mom as well. And I think this is like my creative outlet. Having this podcast allows me to do something a little bit more meaningful, like bigger than me, but also it is my self-care. And I talk a lot about self-care and how different women are doing it in their own lives and how, it's so important, but it looks so different in everyone else's lives. And, it's not just the bubble baths and the massages, but I think this is something that just fuels me in a way that, exercise and girls' nights out and those other things that we all have to do if that's what works for you. This just gives me a bigger purpose and I love having this podcast because I see it as my self-care and my creative outlet.
Yeah. A lot of the reasons I can echo that you started yours, but going a bit deeper, or maybe some new ideas too that you probably resonate with as well, are I wanted to, demask the highlight reel of social media. I think that we all like to show the happy path of our lives. Even I was posting photos of my daughter's birthday party, and some people who don't have kids are like, oh, she's so cute. Oh, I love it. And I said, this is not what it's like all the time, having to hold boundaries, having to have cranky, over sugared toddlers and put them to bed after the birthday party is not the fun side of it. So one reason I just really wanted to have a forum that was a little bit more conducive for long form and getting real, raw, and honest with those conversations. So that was one thing. The second one was a genuine curiosity with understanding how people who have maybe are balancing family life and co-curriculars and running marathons and have a corporate job, even if they don't have a family or kids. I interviewed males that I worked with in the last 10 years and got to interview them about being so multifaceted and how they do that. And I wanted to just be able to have a forum to ask people, tell me what you do, tell me what you actually, feel like you've struggled with and how you figured that out and what are the different phases of hiring help, because not everyone can hire. I know you mentioned a house manager. I have a house keeper that helps us and with laundry and everything, and not as much cooking yet. So I'd love to get to that place. But what's the sliding scale of help, and where do you go? What was your first step of doing that? Then your second and your third, and what was scary? What was interesting learning for yourself? Maybe you're not great at delegating. And sometimes I struggle with that. I need help, but I'm having trouble articulating how I need help and giving systems around it. So sometimes you need someone who can A, build the system, and then B, follow the system. And so I wanted to have other conversations with people about that and how they, I don't want to say juggle. I think even the word balance I've struggled with, where some of my guests have said, oh, I like work-life harmony better, or I like everything to be aligned with my values. And so I think balance is that more elementary level of trying to do it all that we think about. But I think aligned or harmony, work-life harmony is a little bit more what I intended for my message to be, because I've done a lot of work of backing up and saying, what are my values? And then does my day reflect those? And so sometimes it is I'm not working out today. It's a heavy family day, and we have our final soccer game of the season and X and Y and Z. And so I made an intentional decision to not work out today. I didn't try to jam it in there and then feel like a failure because I didn't fit it in and I'm not doing a great job at balancing everything. So how do I flip that around and just anticipate a little better and give myself that grace? So those were some of the reasons there that I had wanted to start my podcast, was genuine curiosity, asking other folks, balancing a lot of things and their cool careers, and ask them more about what they do in their work, as well as touch on all these other things. And then, that the element of kind of unmasking what are people's tips and tricks and how they get help, because I think that that's something that's not talked about as much. And I think it also wasn't as accessible and available years ago when we were getting raised. My mom sees me with Instacart and Amazon delivery and Target delivery and all these things. And she said, I just didn't have those options. You're so blessed to have those if you need them in a pinch or to be more regular occurrences in your life.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I loved everything you said as well. And again, similar to me, really changing that narrative and unmasking, like you said, the social media. And in my head, I'm not super good about posting on social media, but I remember you see everyone's highlight reel, and my family, and we can get into this a little bit more around like investment properties, but we do have a second home in New Hampshire. And so we're finally like a ski family. But for many years, my kids did not like to go out in the cold and ski. And last year was the first year where I got all three kids like happily out there on the mountain, and we took a picture. And I wanted to post something about, you see this happy picture of the five of us standing at the top of the mountain with smiles on our faces. But what you don't see is all of the struggles, all of the stuff we had to do, all of the tantrums that we had to get through to get us on here. And so, because I think I felt like a lot of, comparison. I wouldn't go as far as guilt, but you see everyone else and their beautiful Pinterest picture perfect birthday parties and their kids on the soccer field. And you can't help it, but it's human nature to kind of feel like, well, why isn't my family like that? Or how do we get there? And so again, my podcast, I really wanted to have these conversations to show like, it's not all rosy. And also for myself, like, I don't have it all together. I haven't figured it all out. And so therefore I wanted to ask other women, like, what are you doing? Do you do Instacart? Do you, hire help? I actually just spoke with a woman last week, and she just started hiring a professional organizer to come into her home. And I was like, amazing. I need to look into this as well, because just taking some of that stress off of us. And as women, I think we're raised in a world, in a society where we're expected to do everything that our moms did. But then I also have a full-time job that my mom didn't have. And then you put on top of that all of the social expectations that you're seeing all around us through our media. And it takes a lot of effort and intention, like you said, to remember, like, that's just the highlight reel. And we need to really uncover these real stories so that we don't feel so lonely. And we recognize like there's realness in the world too. And we can have genuine, authentic conversations, and not everyone's got it all figured out, and that's okay. But together, hopefully we can help share these stories and change that narrative so everyone feels better about themselves. And I think that was a big learning through my podcasting journey so far. Is at first I wanted my podcast to be like super practical. Like, how do you get dinner on the table? How do you meal plan? Like, I wanted these really tangible, tactical tips and tricks and advice. And I think one thing that I've learned through all these conversations, it kind of comes down to mindset and perspective and being super intentional. And if you have that as your foundation and groundwork, that helps you do the other day-to-day tasks.
It's so true. And I think that you're going to have different seasons. And I was listening to your episode with, I think her name was Victoria Gibbons. Yeah. And it's cool again to hear someone in a totally different field from us, someone that they work in DC and what was it? Not lobbyist, but with, in politics and stuff. And now living in Austin and commuting there, and just a totally different line of work. And then also what season she's in, with kids being older than my kids and choosing to wake up early to cook a hot breakfast every day for her kids at 5:30. And it just was so beautiful to hear that and think, Oh, I really like that. That resonated with me. Okay, maybe that's something that's a goal of mine. It's not something I'm doing now. My kids are struggling with the daylight saving sleeping and adjustments right now. I don't know if your kids are dealing with that, but it's cool to hear those different. That wasn't her reality, not too long ago with prior marriage and kids at younger ages and COVID and her work where she was working, where she was living, and hearing what that season was like when it was a nanny for 60 hours a week, plus the burning the candle on both ends. And so I think that having time for reflection, understanding what season you're in and what you're okay and not okay with in that season, and making adjustments from there. And I am the first to admit my imperfections. And I think that's something else we probably have in common is I'm a recovering perfectionist and always hard on myself. And I was even talking to a couple of friends of mine that I've met through the real estate world about I think I had said, "Oh, I failed to meditate today." And they said, that's it goes against the spirit of meditation. You saying you failed at this. They're like, you're really hard on yourself, Kim. And you just slowing down and thinking about that. If you didn't get to meditate today, that's okay. Everything's okay. Everything's grand. Just cut yourself some slack. And I realized I have an aura ring and I just started channeling so much power and energy into my stats there that it made or break a day, it made or break a night. And so I think as you're these overachievers and have the measuring stick of either the smiling Instagram story or the Aura Ring stats or your title on LinkedIn, what age you are to what title, are you a director yet? Are you a senior director yet? I loved when Demi Moore won that award a few months ago and said, put the measuring stick down. And I think that we just all need to do that more. And I just love having these beautiful conversations in a forum where I don't have these every day. And when I'm at a coffee shop and stuff, I think my friends live a little further away. I'm usually in the family scramble for getting drop off done, commuting multiple days a week. But that's why I like this is when you make a concerted effort to carve out time to have those raw, really cool, deep conversations with people and realize the more and more you share and connect, the more and things that you think you're failing at or imperfections or where you're falling short are probably your biggest moments to connect with other people, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to hear a little bit more about in your podcast, Balancing Ambitions. I know you kind of said that word balance. It comes up in my podcast a lot too. And I think sometimes people take it literally. And then that's why they're like, nothing can ever be perfect 50-50. And so I do say it, but I think another word that I've been using a lot is more integration and integrating the fact that we are so multifaceted, right? We have so many different passions. We wear so many different hats. We have so many different titles at work, at home, in your family, but also personal ambitions as well. So I'd love for you to share a little bit more about what your family is working on in terms of making sure that you're being fully integrated to show up as a full human being and not just as a mom, not just an employee and a wife. I know I believe you just recently ran your first marathon. Is that correct?
I ran my first half
Oh,
marathon. So
half marathon.
yeah, that's
Yes.
actually
Well,
where I was going to go with
congratulations.
it.
Yes.
Thank
Talk a little
you.
bit about that and how you're kind of bringing integration into your life these days.
Absolutely. So I'll go back a little bit and give some background. So I was always very active. I became a certified spin instructor. I ran marathons in my early 20s. I was that gymaholic friend of yours that's always, even if we're going to breakfast on a Saturday, I'd squeeze in my workout before we had our breakfast date. So that was just a part of my identity. And then after having my second kid, and that was dovetailed with my husband leaving his W-2 job and going into real estate sales and then going into real estate property management is what he's doing now. I found myself with the two little ones working from home because of COVID still and his job and the demands and working weekends and nights. I just stopped working out completely. And that was so unlike me. And that season went on for years, honestly. And so part of my podcast and why I started it again was that self-care thread. I didn't talk about that earlier, but that resonated with me where I think that there's self-care like me going to the sauna, and then there's self-care of like my fitness and my health and for my longevity. And I think those are different. And I wasn't doing either of those things, even just getting the workouts in, never mind the bath with my Epsom salt for when I'm sore after training run, that wasn't happening either. And so I started to do these baby steps with doing 10-minute yoga trainings from the Peloton app. So back, I want to say it was end of 2023, we got home from a 3-hour car ride home from a ski mountain. We used to have a place up in Sunday River, and I was so sore and tight. And I said, I just need to stretch. So I just threw on a 10-minute Peloton video and stretched. And then I kept doing that and I kept doing that. And I said, oh, I'm going to do 10 minutes a day for a year. And I made it for 10 months. And I gave myself grace. I was lying in bed after painting my son's bedroom, like painting it. And it was like 11:50 at night. I'm like, oh, I can get up now and go do my 10 minutes, or I could cater to my need to rest right now and sleep and just let go of this goal and say, wow, it really instilled some big changes. Because then I started doing strength and cardio again. So that was the big turning point for me 2 years ago, was just starting small with that 10 minutes and then letting it snowball from there. I've done various goals in the last 2 years where I hired my strength training coach at Firewall Fitness, where we just realized we both go, and saying, hey, I really want to put muscle on. So I did that for a season. But then I had this nagging goal of mine that's been a life goal, which is to do the Boston Marathon. So I've done Boston twice as a bandit runner. So for those who aren't familiar, before there was the bombings in, I think, 2013, they let all the registered runners go, and then a couple hundred of us would just run the marathon without official numbers and bibs and stuff, but still finish it, get a little aluminum, the tinfoil blanket at the end was the only thing, was our only badge of completing it. But I've always wanted to run it with a number. My aunts and uncles, I remember watching them as a kid run it. And so that was a life goal. And so this spring I was thinking about that and said, I really want to make a go at that. And so I started training with a running coach, applied for bib numbers. I got waitlisted. So I said, okay, maybe not 2026, but it might be a 2027 or 2028 thing. And so I pivoted my plan and said to my coach, let's try to get me to qualify. If I get a charity number some year, great, but let me do that. So and where I get, just to summarize where I'm at now is, I have a plan of the workouts I want to get done in the week, and working with my running coach. Even I let her know when I'm traveling or have a busy day on my Saturday long run, and we pivot and change it to a Sunday. So I've outsourced the thinking because I'm an overthinker, I'm an overachiever. So I needed someone to help hold me accountable to make sure I did enough and not too much, because I would actually do too much. If you told me I needed to just do 3 strength training sessions a week, I'll do 4. So I needed someone to help me stay right on the straight and narrow, to not have that overachiever creep in, because that can be detrimental and backfire if you're overtraining for a number of reasons. And I've learned that through experience and through reading and knowledge and stuff over the years too, and realized, oh, I wasn't doing that right for a long time. So for now, with kids' schedule, my husband's goals with fitness and health, we have to sit out at the beginning of the week and talk through it. Every day is kind of a snowflake where, oh, our son has ninja class tonight. I'm getting my run in. So you're going to bring our daughter to ninja with you. And so it is a day by day. So it's a bit exhausting because we don't have that predictable cadence too much given our lives, and especially his being in real estate, where it's a 3D job. He was up in Maine near Sunday River visiting a bunch of houses he manages, and the week before he was in another part of the state. So we just have a very dynamic lifestyle, and his work is very dynamic. So it really takes us being in really good communication to synchronize our schedules and ensure each of us gets our needs met. But I used to also sacrifice sleep. I don't do that anymore. And it's challenging with the kids. So that's helped, where I sleep as long as I can. As soon as they get to bed, I try to get to bed, and I sleep in as late as they sleep in, where I used to go to the gym at 4 a.m. and be really dragging and have low energy by 3 p.m. And I didn't like that. So I've been constantly tweaking and experimenting with what optimizes all the things that I value, which is having my energy, being a patient mom, being a really good worker who can focus and dial in when she needs to and doesn't start to have her battery drained by 3 p.m. and feel like a slog for the last couple hours of the day. And I feel like I'm at a good place where those things are integrating and they are really in a really good sync right now. Things come and you have curveballs come that throw you off kilter. And so responding to those has been something that you just have to navigate. So some weeks, some seasons are just more challenging, whether I get sick or the kids get sick or there's travel on either side, my husband's or mine. And so rolling with that and having that grace, I've just been better about that. I'm still a little too hard on myself, and that voice inside my head about success, failure, get it done. done, or don't, I just don't, don't try to miss anything. But I think being realistic from the beginning for each day and each week and outsourcing thinking where I can has helped me dial in and get really clear on my goals and my values and not overextending myself. I need downtime. I need alone time every day. And I just, even if my husband and I go away for a weekend, I'm like, hey, I need to like have 30 minutes to myself and just go for a walk. Is that okay? So just learning those things that fill your cup up, or you find you get cranky if you don't get them, and just vocalizing those. And so that's where my season's been a lot better right now with balancing the fitness, the career, the family and stuff. And my kids are just on this cusp of getting a little easier. Like people told me forever, they said, oh, it gets easier, it gets easier. Those terrible twos. My mom used to say terrible twos last until 5. So I laugh because my son at 6 and he's in kindergarten, he stayed back a year. He's just starting to get a bit easier, more able to vocalize his needs or when he needs space or manage his emotions. And my daughter's getting there too. She has her moments. So I think that all these things orchestrating together is really creating a little bit more of a balanced kind of collective, kind of a balanced, how would I say it? Our group and our unit as a family of 4 is really getting more balanced and everyone's getting their needs met and expressed, which is really nice because it wasn't that always this way. And we've just had ups and downs over the last few years.
Yeah, I love that. I love how true and authentic you were in sharing that story. I love that term that you use, that you guys are dynamic. You're a dynamic couple with every day is a little different and ebbs and flows, and you have to give yourself grace. I will say that's kind of how our family is operating as well now too. My husband, with returning to office policies that are happening right now, he's been commuting into Boston a lot more. So whereas before, in the last 5 years, it was a lot easier to manage, popping in a couple days a week. There's a more structure for him. And so that puts a lot more pressure on me to be home with the kids or getting them to whatever sports practices they have, or even doing mornings and evenings. So we also do that, like fly by the seat of your pants. Like, okay, tomorrow, are you in the office? I have to be in the office on Wednesday. Can you be home by 3 o'clock when the bus drops off? And so I want people to know, like, that's totally okay. You have to obviously communicate with your partner and ensure that you're all on the same page, but it doesn't have to be like this formal Sunday sit down, like plan out the whole week. If you can get there, amazing and awesome. But personally, we haven't gotten there yet because everything is changing. Like you said, people get sick, things change. We have only had like 2 full weeks of school since like August when school started. And it's wild because, you just have to manage all of these dynamic parts of life. But similar to you, I think I've kind of come into a season of my life of recognizing, like, I need to manage my energy. I used to be that person who could do all the things, like put my kids to bed and then just also stay up till midnight, like logging back onto work or doing whatever I wanted to do, or even like foregoing so much sleep. And so I also have an Aura ring, and that's been my goal lately, like recognizing that I really need to sleep. And even though if mentally I don't think I need to sleep, my body needs to sleep and my body needs to rest and recharge. And that's okay. Like if I'm sleeping, I'm actually doing something, even though it doesn't feel like I'm doing something. But I really had to come to terms with that myself. And I love how you talked about like starting with small steps, right? It's like 10 minutes of stretching or yoga a day, but making it that non-negotiable for yourself and really honoring yourself and your commitments. And yeah, some days you're not going to do it for whatever reason, and giving yourself that grace, but making it small enough that it feels doable and that you're going to hold yourself accountable to that goal. Or if you need to hire a trainer and have them help you keep accountable, just having that self-awareness of what you need to feel better every day is so important. And one big thing that I've learned over the last couple of years, because I think it sounds like we have similar personalities, where I think we were taught this success formula of if you do all the things, then you'll have the success that you want. You'll have the job title, you'll have the money, you'll have the car, you'll have the house, but you have to do all these things. And once you have all those things, then you'll be happy, then you'll be successful, then you'll be whatever that goal that you're looking to be is. But through, some coaching work that I've done and personal development work, I realized that the success formula that I'm trying to live my life by is flipping it on its head and being like, who do I want to be? I want to be happy. At the end of the day, that's what I want. And so I don't need to kill myself to do all these things, to have all these things, and then be happy. I can start here and be happy now and figure out what my body needs, what my energy level is. And if I can start in this higher vibe place, then I'll be more aligned to do the work that I have to do, that mundane everyday task. It feels more in alignment with myself. And when I do all those things, then I'll have, the outcome and achieve similar results, right? But it starts from like your place of being versus like, even my husband and I would talk a lot about, when you're sucked into a corporate job and you're in emails or you're doing all that work and then you get stuck on a problem and then you just sit there and you force it. And we all know like to get up and go take a walk and walk away is the best thing to do. But we were taught, I was raised to like do all your work and then have your reward. Then you can play, then you can have fun. But I realize, if I do a morning workout or I walk in the morning, I come back to my desk so much more refreshed. Or even in the afternoon when the kids come home, like if I've had, a little bit of meditation time or quiet time for myself to fill up my own cup and be present and not that frazzled mom, I can be, I show up better for them as well. And so really recognizing like that being piece of it and being intentional about how I want to be, how I want to show up and not like push and hustle my way through to success has been like a big learning that I've been really trying to incorporate over the last couple of years.
We are living parallel lives. I've done a lot of personal development, read books on it, classes, workshops, you name it. And one of my mentors, Angie Wisdom, who's a master certified coach, which I think you have to get 2,500 hours of coaching in order to get that level. It took her 8 years. And this is exactly what she preaches is you take care of yourself and your values first, then the success comes. And you're going to get there faster and with more grace and ease if you do that. And we just have it backwards. And I just did a workshop of hers a couple of weeks ago. And it was really cool it was just 2 sessions. And the second one, I showed up and said, I had a really cool win where the founder of my company had reshared something on LinkedIn from the founder of kayak.com. And the founder of Kayak had said, we built this company and its success with myself and my other founder having young children. We rarely talked on the nights or weekends on our cell phones for something urgent for work. And we really didn't work more than 50 hours a week normally. And my co-founder echoed that and said, I found the same thing when I founded TripAdvisor and CarGurus. And it's about the quality of work, not the quantity. And it was so validating as someone I respect and I've worked with, worked under for almost 10 years to see that because that wasn't the narrative for so long, for like decades. And I'm glad that the narrative is changing and you can get far and some people still like grind culture, pushing from a fear of like anger and grit and fear, but that's not how I want to get there. And my timeline or my destination might be a little different, but that's okay. I'd rather be who I am now with more energy, more integration, more alignment at 37 because I'm way happier right now than I was 2 years ago because I've been so much more intentional and done a lot of that soul searching and had those hard times and moments and that loneliness, that void. I love exercise and for all the reasons, the health reasons, the endorphins, the being prideful of hitting a milestone. Running, I used to work out the same amount of time, but going on a 6-mile run in the sunshine just hits differently and it just has this different endorphin boost than other ways of working out. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah. And I also love that you shared that story about the founder of your company who is a male and also is now embracing that mentality because I think this is what we need. We need leadership that is more empathetic. We want people who, I think when corporate culture in America was first founded, it was so industrial. It was very patriarchal, very male driven. It was all about output. And now we're in an age where people are feeling more burnout than ever. And I also think that my personal experienced during COVID was there was just no boundaries anymore because we were just all glued to our smartphones and our laptops. And you were just expected, whenever someone pinged you, you were expected to be on and answer right away. And all of that, we lost the commute time. We were just in back-to-back meetings, right? You have a meeting that ends at 2 o'clock and your next meeting starts at 2 o'clock. And so I think we really need to pause again and refocus our society and say, what do we want? And I want other women to recognize, like, the burnout's not your fault. Like, we weren't built, like, our society and our systems in America were not built to support us as two working families with children in a school system that does not match up with our corporate culture and our schedules. And so until there's more of that societal and political change from the top, the onus is on us to figure out, like, what can I do for my own sanity, my own mental health, my own physical health, to do what's best for me and my lifestyle and figure out that integration. Because I just don't think leadership, let alone like corporate, the government's totally not there yet, but even corporate culture, what can we do just to keep employees safe and happy and motivated right now? And I think we're just starting to see a lot more of that dialogue now, which I really appreciate, because things are coming up to the surface. And, mental health, it's a crisis in our society. People are burning out, and that's not healthy. And we really need to make sure that we're supporting our people because ultimately people are what make companies and the country move forward.
Absolutely. And I think finding ways that we can serve through our voice, through our podcast, through any other way that lights us up is how I found to be fulfilled from this. Either I'm getting help from people who are further along than me. Like I had this couple who has children that are college age, law school age. One just graduated, just finished their law degree. And the husband had said, listen, I never looked back and said, gosh, I wish I worked more when my kids were younger. You're always going to say, I wish I worked less. I wish I was more present, especially for those years when they're under 10, where I forget what the statistic is of what percentage of time you've had with your kids in their whole lifetime is done by the time they're 10, or you're their favorite person up until 10. And then it's their friends and their boyfriends and their girlfriends, and they just want to not have as much to do with you. I hope that's not the case with my children, but I'm sure they're going to be some sort of pulling away and individualizing at that phase, which your kids are right there. My kids are a little farther away. They want me 24/7. But at my job, we have a parents resource group, and they had a co-chair seat opening up last year. And I said, I want to do that. I finally feel like I'm in a season where I can breathe again at work with my family. My kids are a little bit older. They're not newborn babies, but I went in just so excited to serve and with new ideas and bridging the gap more with our HR team and our benefits team. And I had two cool wins today. One was we had a guest speaker in September, a doctor who's spoken at my CEO's son's school before, and he came and did a guest speaking event, and we sent him a handwritten card. I had bought the card and got the other members of the resource groups to sign their signatures and stuff. And it took us a while to get that because of the hybrid workplace and people in and out, not in the office at the same time. And he sent a note to our CEO over the weekend and just thanked him for the handwritten card. And he forwarded it to us and said, messages like this make me so effing happy that, to be, I'm so proud of where I work. And he's not saying he's so glad we hit our Q3 revenue numbers. He's saying he's so proud of this resource group, proudly representing him and the values and going that extra effort to send a handwritten note to a guest speaker we had. And it made me emotional. It was really exciting and empowering to hear that. And also just those softer touches, that emotional intelligence and stuff. That's one of my favorite things. And we're in open enrollment now, given that season of the corporate world. And I ran into this, one of the women in HR who I've partnered with on resources for parents to help explain a little bit more in layman's terms what's applicable to parents. What do you have to sign up for right now? And what's something that is evergreen and you can tap into whenever? Because there's this fear and anxiousness around it. Oh, this is the window I have to change it. Otherwise, I have to have a qualifying life event or I can't change it. And I was scared of that. And I'd made missteps over the last 6 years in that, being misinformed or misunderstanding. And so I wanted to help other parents. So we did that. And so now we're talking about a second resource like that for neurodivergent kids. I have a neurodivergent kid, so I had to navigate hey, he's having a harder time at daycare. He is having bigger emotions. He may or may not have something going on. Should you do the neuropsych? Should you not? How much does it cost? What will insurance cover? What won't it cover? Doing behavioral therapy. So I had to navigate that. Just that's one example of neurodivergency. And she said she's had a ton of people asking about that. And so they want to put our thinking caps on how do we find out all the information with our Blue Cross plan and this plan and that plan and distill it down into a simple guide for them. I love that. That's one of my strengths is taking a bunch of information and trying to and distilling it down into a very simple, easy to understand way and teach it. And so it's so cool to apply things, years of experience in tech and product, and then apply it for parents with HR and partnering with HR. They're like, hey, Kim, we want to work with you on this. We need your help on this. And I'm like, absolutely. I'm so excited. So you can find ways to serve that light you up. And that's only a fraction of my job here. And it's all volunteer and it's supposed to take up 10% of your time or less, but it lights me up and it's marrying a bunch of my strengths together in a way that I didn't expect. And that just, there's so many opportunities like that that can light us up. And I think just paying attention to them and finding how we can serve in those ways is what really makes me feel like I'm giving back, and that I'm letting other people not struggle as much or as long as I did when I was in those positions.
Yeah, I love that. Similar at my company, we also have a parent like ERG, a resource group. So similar, I worked with our parent group also to say, how can we ensure that parents really understand what benefits there are? Because our company provides so many wonderful benefits like backup care when, your other childcare plans fall through. We have like another company like Bright Horizons that you can also utilize in order to get last minute childcare. And so I know I've utilized all of these resources, but I had to figure it out on my own, right? Like I didn't know who to go to. And so, especially if you're a new expectant parent, whether you're a mom or a dad, the amount of time that you dive into these rabbit holes researching all of these things, like all the insurance stuff and all the things a new parent worries about, you're taking up valuable time away from your work essentially. And so the more that our companies can help us bridge that gap and share that information and really share those best practices, that will just help make everyone just more productive in general. So I love that you're doing that. Yes, I've certainly helped out at my company as well. But yeah, I've struggled with a lot of my son is neurodivergent as well. And we've also had to go down that path. But I feel like it's all stuff that I've been doing on my own time, all of that research to find out how much does it cost to get to a neuropsych exam and where do I go? And the wait list when we were doing it was like a year long, which was ridiculous. I don't know if it's a little bit better now, but just to have something consolidated where people feel that psychological safety first to share what they're going through and to ask for help and have those resources available in an easier to navigate way, I think is so important and hopefully something that more and more companies are embracing because there are women like us who are out there sharing our voices and saying, these are things that we need to do differently or we need to share this information because it just helps everyone at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And something that you said there reminded me of something I was even dealing with this morning, which wasn't related to my son's neurodivergence or anything. Possibly it was he had failed his hearing test at school and he had one at his physical, but they said he failed it. I don't know if he was not paying attention. He has ADHD. So he failed his eye test this summer. We brought him to the eye doctor. He's fine. He just didn't feel as confident naming letters and stuff. And so I took that and it wasn't on my to-do list of the personal, my work and stuff. And so it was a net new thing. Check my email quick and see, oh, shoot, do I have to bring him to an ear doctor? Is it more he was distracted because his friends were in the room? I don't know. So there's this comparison to an earlier version of myself when I was in my early 20s, didn't use up my PTO enough, never needed personal time really, never, I had just my normal physical and that was it. And with this explosion in complexity with now myself, my needs, my husband's, my kids, each kid and having different, their regular physical, the behavioral therapy, maybe you have to go to the eye doctor because they failed the eye doctor exam, the parent teacher conference. I found myself just beating myself up like, gosh, why do I have all, and doing all these personal things that are normal, like the parent teacher conferences, they have them after work or they have them during their half days. So we did one of the half days during lunch. But again, I'm working on giving myself that grace that that's okay. That's why we have personal time. And it just feels uncomfortable and it feels unnatural because of comparing myself to 22-year-old Kim, who didn't have as much complexity, who didn't have the same needs, and just could be a workhorse and sit at her desk for 9 hours straight, literally, and barely even take a lunch break. And so recognizing that's not my normal anymore, and maybe that wasn't healthy in other ways, but that's why we have these. And so I still feel this guilt of using those benefits, but this is exactly why they're there. And so that's something just to rectify in my brain. I don't know if you feel that too, but that comparison to your earlier version of your work ethic or work time, or just the simplicity of your being able to dial in and focus, it's just, there's beauty in that. And there's also unrealisticness in that because of how we now have families. And I remember Ellen Pompeo got interviewed on the Call Her Daddy podcast, and there's an amazing clip where she talks about how once she had kids, her brain could never fully be where she was. It's, never can fully be at work now that you have these little walking pieces of your heart around. And it's just so, so true. And to hear an actress on a leading show of decades saying that was so empowering and validating to hear that.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that podcast. I'll have to look it up. But yeah, we haven't talked about mom guilt yet. And, that's a whole nother podcast episode in and of itself. But I love what you're saying that, when you kind of reflect back to 20-year-old Kim or 20-year-old Angela, yeah, we were workhorses. We raised our hands, we did our stuff. And I do feel like for myself, I was okay putting in those boundaries and recognizing, like, if my son had a doctor's appointment, I was like, I gotta log off. It's like 2 o'clock, but I need to bring him to the doctor's office. I'll be back. I'll log back on later tonight. And I never felt guilt around that because I always was like, no, this is important. Like, he needs to go to the doctor. But similarly, like, if it was, I would feel guilty, like, putting a 9 o'clock doctor's appointment on for myself, right? Like, I'd have to do it at like 7 or 8 o'clock, where it was like, where it would be inconvenient, well, more like convenient for my work schedule. And so I think that's something I've had to really come to terms with myself, is like, for my kids, I've always been able to put them first and not feel that guilt because I was like, I can make up that time later. But for myself, I also had to give myself that same type of like unapologetic boundaries to say, no, there are certain things that I need to get done. Yes, it might be during those work hours, but I had to get myself to a place where, like, I know that I've established myself in my company. My manager and I have a good relationship. She'll know that I'm still on top of it. I'll get my work done, even if I have to step away from my desk for my own personal stuff. So it was weird because I really didn't have an issue with it if it was kids related, but if it was for me personally, I felt like that guilt around it. Like, oh, my company pays me like the full 40 hours a week. I need to be glued to my desk 40 hours a week. And now just the shift of how work is different, right? And the fact that we're always on and we have these smartphones and I can take a call when I'm in my car commuting to work. Like, I just had to wrap my head around really putting in these boundaries for myself beyond just the kids.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's so interesting that because you're placing the appointment at the end of the day to, that when we talk about that integration, there was less guilt taking it from the family at sometimes, or it just felt like that's what you had to do or should do. And that workhorse kind of identity was still seeping in, and having to rectify that to find more peace with the schedule and the decisions, and find that this is the best that's in the alignment with the various goals that I am trying to balance. I love that.
Yeah, and it's exactly what you said, the shoulds, right? I think I had to like stop shoulding myself and being like, I should do this, I should do that, because it was all in my head. I think you had mentioned that, like, you're an overthinker, and I was very much caught up in that as well for so long, where then I'd be like, no, give yourself grace. Like, you're going to get the job done, and people trust you to get your work done. And so it doesn't mean that you like literally need to physically be tied to your computer the whole time, and you need to put in better, healthier boundaries for yourself. But I think for me, it came with a lot more of my own self identity and just saying I was worth it, right? Like those non negotiables we talked about, like making sure that you're going to put in that 10 minutes a day to do your stretching or your yoga, or your walk or something. Like, I just kept putting myself last. I would be the first one to drop all my other stuff that I needed to do for myself and overcompensate or overcommit to things for everyone else. And so in the last few years, I really had to say, no, I need to put myself first again, right? Like, put your oxygen mask on yourself first, and then you can help the others. And like, who do I want to be? I can't, if I'm a shell of a person, then I'm not helping anyone. So if I can get that walk in the morning, even if it's like from 9 to 9:30, it can still be productive because I'll be more productive when I sit back at my desk and like bang out a lot of emails or a lot of really good thinking time. And half the time when I'm walking out there anyways, I'm thinking about work. So it's a win-win, but I really had to commit and say I'm worth it to make sure that I was holding myself accountable to those non-negotiables and not just letting all those other things slip away.
Mhm. Yes, my mentor says, instead of, should, everything is I choose. So, I want to, or I'd like to, or this. She's like, just everything is I choose or you don't choose. I choose to do my 4 miles after I finish work today. I choose this, I choose that. And so when I rephrase that, you're gonna hesitate and you're not gonna say some of the phrases that surround the "I should" anymore. You're saying, "Actually, I don't choose that. I don't choose doing my appointment at 7 p.m." or whatever it might be, and so that was a helpful reframing for me. And the second thing you made me think of is, another mentor had asked, us challenged our group at this workshop on rating ourselves on how we'd score our nutrition, our sleep, our movement, and our hydration. And they said on a scale of 1 to 10, whatever 10 is for you, if you're a vegan or vegetarian, like your nutrition is going to be evaluated differently than someone else who's doing paleo. But whatever it is for you and your values, would you rate them between 1 and 10? And anything that's under an 8, an 8 or sorry, 8 and over was pretty good. And she said, if any of these are under that, you are also capping out your professional success at this. Can you love yourself enough to move your body as much as it needs to be? Can you love yourself enough to drink enough water? Can you love yourself enough to sleep enough to eat healthfully for you? And I look back at those older Kims, that versions of Kim that weren't prioritizing nutrition or exercise or sleep. And for me personally, and not saying this is the case for you, I just say, wow, I didn't love myself enough to vocalize my needs. I did not love myself enough to say, hey, I understand you're doing a career change and are working 10 hours on a Saturday. I choose to go to the gym before you go into the office to do your 10 hours of real estate sales. And I just self wrote that off. It wasn't even a conversation because of that example I had, that martyrdom, that the societal pressure I felt that wasn't articulated or verbalized, but I just felt was innate. And I just look back and say, wow, I didn't love myself enough to vocalize those needs. And if I did, I wouldn't have let that happen. And so I give myself a lot of grace as a new mom, working full time through COVID, supporting a partner, doing a career change. But that was the truth. And so I just am very cautious as I see things potentially rocking the boat on my ability to get my needs met. And so I'm much more vocal on that stuff, maybe too vocal. Now I'm such a stickler on those boundaries, but I think it's a good thing because the other way was so unhealthy. Just continuing to put everyone first, everyone first, everyone first, and just find years and years of a season that wasn't very me.
You articulated that so well because, yes, that is exactly what the journey I had to go through as well. And recognizing that, yes, I didn't love myself enough to put myself first. Felt like I had to be this martyr, and then I would take it out on my husband because I didn't have a healthy way of communicating my needs because I honestly hadn't seen it modeled in my own childhood, right? And I had a mom who also bent over backwards and did everything for everyone else. And cooked, the full Thanksgiving dinner and did all the grocery shopping, all the cooking, all the cleaning by herself. And my husband and I, we've had to walk through that journey together, right? First, with me starting to say, I prioritize myself. I need to start working out again or getting some, girls' night outs or whatever. But then also in the home and asking my husband for help. And ultimately, what we ended up having to do is because he wasn't not going to step up and do the laundry and the dishes. We did actually look to hire help, and now we do have a house manager, and that takes that off the plate. But there are other conversations that we still have to help out with, but it would accumulate for me, right? All this resentment of me doing all the things, the childcare, the household stuff, full-time job on top of it. And I would burn out and then take it out on my husband. And I recognize, obviously, that's not a healthy way of communicating and getting through this, but it really, and he would ask me, he would be like, what do you need? And I said, I don't know. I don't know what I need. I know I don't like what we're going through right now. And I don't know if like you just doing the dishes is going to really change anything. So I had to dig deeper and deeper and deeper to say, what do I need? And how can I give myself that love? And then once I could figure that out for myself, then I could communicate it to my husband. And so we're in a much better place now. But it took years of us trying to figure this out. And for me, recognizing like I really did not know how to not only communicate what I needed, but I really did not know what I wanted. I didn't know what anything else looked like other than I have to do all the work by myself and silently seethe and pile on all the resentment. So I think that's just another huge learning that it sounds like we've both have gone through, and so many people I'm sure can relate to our stories.
Yeah. And I think one important point I hear there that's echoed in mine is it doesn't change overnight. You need to take small steps and you learn from them. And then over time, it builds and builds and builds. But you said, yes, you doing the dishes one time is not going to solve this. It's patterns and momentum and cycles that we need to change. And that just takes time. It takes months and months and years to get to a different place. And that was the same thing with me, where there's these little moments like the 10 minutes of yoga. I was really tight and annoyed after that long, long car ride and sitting. And that's why I said, oh, I just need to stretch and do yoga. What if I did this every day for a year? Another one, I had a mentor encourage me just to get my nails done. I used to get my nails done all the time pre-COVID. Then COVID happened, young kids, being tied up a lot with my husband's work on the weekends. And also just the money. I'm like, oh, I don't want to spend the money. I'm going to be very practical and save the money. And she said, what does Kim in the future do? What does she have? What does she wear? What does she drive and stuff? Does she have her nails done? And I said, yes, she does have her nails done. That future version we're always striving for. She's like, you have to bring her forward. Go get your nails done this weekend. And it was the hardest thing. I'm like, no, that's not practical. I feel bad taking the time. I don't want to spend the money. And just that one little tipping point, that one little domino helped me to find more dominoes, and what lights me up, makes me feel like me. I like being put together. I like doing my hair every day. The rain today did not help my hair, but I like being put together. I like wearing certain clothes. I like having my nails done. I like feeling polished. And it took trial and error, and it does take spending money sometimes and finding whatever works for you. So if you're don't love your car, but you can't go afford to buy the car, your dream car, just get your car cleaned and detailed. Even do it yourself. My kids love vacuuming the car. They're at the age where they still love that stuff. And so that's something I'll treat myself to, is detailing my car. And it just feels so good. So finding those things to make you whole, taking care of your body, yourself, the things around you, because people just feel better in those environments that have order, and we just didn't have order within ourselves. And so that's going to come out in unhealthy ways. And the more we can establish that order and things that make us feel good in a variety of ways, the better we're going to show up for all of the different people and organizations we just mentioned.
Yeah, that's such a powerful tip to think about. What does future Kim look like? What does future Angela look like? And then how can I incorporate that today? And that just opens up our minds and our hearts in a way that you can't even imagine, if you can just pull forward that future version of yourself and live that today. So
Mhm.
I think that's actually a beautiful way for us to end our conversation today. But I just loved how open and honest and real we could be. I feel like we could honestly talk forever, and there are probably way more conversations and topics that we could delve into. But thank you so much, Kim. I am really excited that we've connected. And it just seems like I knew, just based on like our initial conversations, we had like a lot in common, but more like surface level stuff. But now just chatting about like the personal work that you've done on yourself, it sounds like we have very similar philosophies and have gone through kind of similar paths to get to where we are now.
Absolutely. This was such a beautiful conversation. I love this connection. Thank you so much for reaching out. And this is just a fabulous collaboration. I can't wait to share it with folks.
Thank you, Kim. We'll talk later.
As always, if you enjoyed this show, please leave a review, because when you leave a review or share an episode, you make it easier for someone else to find us and benefit from these stories and tips we share. There is a link to everything we talked about in the show notes. Thank you all for listening to the Balancing Ambitions podcast, and have a beautiful day.